Something I've come across quite a bit recently is someone saying, hey, I've been farming for an item and I've done 100 monoliths or 200 or 500 and I still haven't gotten it. Is there anything that I can do to improve my farming? Now, sometimes there's an easy fix. They were farming in the wrong monolith, or maybe they weren't using all their runes of ascendance. These things are pretty common, easy fixes. I have a video on how you can boss rush, which is handy for target farming. I also have a video on how you can use Rune of Ascendance. Check both of them out after this. There's one thing which I've seen way too much of, which is people farming in normal monoliths. That is very, very bad because you don't get most of the loot, you don't get good blessings, which is character power, and you can't push corruption. And if you do this, you are farming wrong. You are depriving yourself of tons of upgrades, and you're also probably stuck because you can't move forward because you're depriving yourself of upgrades. So if you've been farming for a relatively common item, you've been doing it for hours and hours and hours, hundreds of monolith echoes, and you couldn't figure out why it's not dropping, this is probably the biggest factor. Also, if you want to know more about Last Epoch, or maybe you're just looking forward to my build guide, do be sure to get subscribed, leave a like while you're down there. And for now, let's get into all the ways in which it's better to farm in empowered monoliths. So the first benefit is that there's a minimum level required, based on the level requirement of the item, for it to drop. That's why you don't see random endgame uniques or powerful rare bases dropping during the campaign. This also means during the low early monoliths, you're not going to see those bases either. But it might be that you have to farm the low early monoliths, such as Fall of the Outcast, because that's where the item you need is, either in terms of a boss drop, or in terms of a drop off of one of the nodes. Luckily, if you do this in empowered monoliths instead, every single area is level 100, and if you're like, but I'm level 70, I can't fight level 100 enemies, don't worry. In most cases, your build should be fine. It's really corruption that scales the difficulty, not the level of enemies. And trust me, you do not want to farm all the way to level 100 before getting to empowered monos. That sounds like absolute misery simulator. Like farming to level 100 in Path of Exile Hardcore in Dried Lake or Doc's level of misery simulator. Do not do that, please. Now, the second part of this comes from the bosses themselves, where bosses have certain items that are considered to be common and certain items that are considered to be rare. The rare ones can theoretically drop in normal monos, but it's very, very unlikely. A good example of this is Apathy's Maw from the Shade of Oribus, where, yeah, you can technically get it at 50 corruption, but it's pretty rare, and it drops super frequently if you're doing it in empowered monos. Also, the Omnis Amulet, which is very rare and powerful, doesn't drop from Oribus at all until you're at 200 corruption, which is only possible in empowered monoliths. The same thing goes for regular boss drops. There are several items that you really won't be seeing until you farm in empowered monos. And another advantage of farming bosses in empowered monoliths is you can build up stability faster, meaning you can run more bosses. Areas also have a higher chance of dropping LP uniques, and this scales with corruption. So, by farming in empowered monos, you get more upgrades. By getting more upgrades, your build gets stronger. And because your build gets stronger, you can do more corruption, which helps you get more upgrades. Because corruption also gives a massive bonus to item rarity. So, a higher chance of exalted items, a higher chance of unique items, etc., etc. And so just to demonstrate this a little bit more visibly, I put together some footage of myself going through first a normal monolith, then a 100 corruption monolith, then around 500 corruption. So you have normal, base empowered, 500 corruption empowered. As a note, I am level 10 in Circle of Fortune, so you're going to see a little bit of extra loot from that, but all things being equal, it does kind of still scale across the three difficulties. The thing to notice in particular is item rarity, which when you're farming uniques is really, really important. The more item rarity, the higher chance that instead of something dropping as magic and getting hidden by your filter, which by the way is going to be off for this test, it might drop as rare, exalted, or even unique. So here's 30 seconds for each of those. And so, as you can see, there's a lot more higher rarity items if you're doing the high corruption empowered monoliths. Odds are if you're farming and just getting started, you're not going to be able to do 500, but you could very likely do somewhere between 100 and 200. This also again gets you access to the empowered blessings, which is more character power that you can use to help yourself progress. Being able to push towards the outer areas of the Echo Web also lets you build up stability, which means you can boss rush faster. And if you're farming for unique, you'll be able to find plenty of unique specific nodes along your way. In short, the more efficiently you complete content, the more drop chances you have. And also, the more drops you're getting, the more runes of ascendance you have, which you can use to then try to target farm the specific unique item you want. So, if you want to learn more about how to target farm uniques by using Rune of Ascendance and which ones are appropriate for that, or alternatively, if you want to know more about boss rushing because maybe you're going after a boss drop item, then I have videos for both, which you can check out after this, up in the card and down below. Or if you've never done an empowered monolith and want to know more, then check out the guide over at MaxwellGG, which will also be down below. And so I'm curious, have you ever tried to farm in normal monoliths? And if so, at what point did you realize it probably wasn't working? If you've never tried to do that, what's some other silly, funny, or embarrassing thing that you tried to do in Last Epoch? In terms of myself, I once killed the bosses from Spirits of Fire 20 times, trying to get the % armor blessing. Didn't realize that drops from Herod in Age of Winter instead. So yeah, it was never going to drop. I was in completely the wrong spot. That was a bit embarrassing, but hey, live and learn. So feel free to leave some of your embarrassing stories down below so that other people can learn from your mistakes. That said, I'd like to take a minute to thank the patrons and channel members for the continued support. For as low as $1 a month, you can help make videos just like this one possible. Link to support is down below. And also, a big thanks to everyone who watched to the end. I hope you learned something about how loot in Last Epoch or farming in general works, and hopefully you'll be able to find that item you've been chasing. And so with that, best of luck, and I'll see you in the next one.